Thank you for joining us tonight. If you want to see more content, please like and follow us on our YouTube channel or on our social media. Tonight we have another student joining in. I'll let him jump on. In the interim, I will introduce our speakers. So I believe it's Financial Literacy Month, so the timing is perfect for us. We have James Vaccaro, the Chairman, President, and CEO of Manasquan Bank, who's going to be speaking tonight. He is joined by Kristine Zulewski. Did I say that right?
You did.
She is the VP of Retail Branch Manager. And we have Luanne Siverio, who is the VP and Compliance Officer, who will also be joining. So thank you so much. We're so grateful to hear from you, and I'm going to turn it over.
Carla, thank you very much. I apologize. I'm having problems with my video and sparing you all so you don't have to look at me this evening. Appreciate it very much. As Carla mentioned, I'm privileged to be Chairman, CEO, and President of Manasquan Bank, a wonderful organization that's been around for a little bit of time, about 147 years, born March 21st, 1874. So it's a traditional community banking organization that really focuses on small businesses and retail and the like. And so, as Carla said, this is Financial Literacy Month. One of the things that we do is we spend a lot of time, and Luanne and Christina will talk a little bit about making sure that the next generation is literate when it comes to finances. And what's really interesting is that the entire landscape is changing as we speak. So if you think about 2 years ago, as I developed our strategic plan, I looked at digital transformation and I said it's going to happen over a 5-year period of time. And then something called COVID-19 hit, and we accelerated that so that that transformation occurred very quickly in 2020. So the fact of the matter is the way you consume financial services in a traditional banking setting is no longer obviously just branches, but also online banking, mobility, ATMs, and the like. And so we have to be very nimble in the marketplace. You often hear that organizations have done a really good job of pivoting in this marketplace. And we actually talk about it a little bit differently. We actually swiveled in this marketplace. So pivot means you move in a different direction. Swivel means that you're nimble enough that you can go in a 360 direction. And so every day is a new challenge. And we wake up at Manasquan Bank with a blank slate and a blank canvas and say, how do we reinvent ourselves so that we can make ourselves more relevant in the marketplace? I am privileged to lead about 220 people in our organization. As I mentioned, we're 147 years old. We are about a $2.2 billion bank. And it's just and one of the things that we focus a lot on is culture within the organization. And that is educating, make sure that each and every one of our employees is empowered to make a good decision. They can make a good decision on behalf of their customer base. They can have a positive impact. And then my job and our job collectively is to make sure we reward and recognize that wonderful work that they do. There are just shy of, for the first time in history in a long time, just shy about 5,000 banks in the country. And for the past 2 years, Manasquan Bank has had the privilege of being named the 43rd best bank to work for in the country and #1 in the state of New Jersey. And it's just a terrific organization. We work very hard on the cultural issues. And you say, so is there a career in community banking? Does it make sense for me to think about community banking? And if you think about sort of what drives the economy and society, because when we look at our stakeholders, we look at those people that make a difference in an organization, we basically focus on 4 different constituencies. One is the depositors, those that are kind enough to provide deposits in our organization. The other ones are our borrowers, those people that need money, whether it be a mortgage or a small business loan. Those people that are the communities at large, which is really to a great degree what we look at, and the employees. And so if you take a combination of those 4 constituencies, those are really the driving forces of a community banking organization. One of the things we often talk about is, it's a small organization. Is there upward mobility? How can I get a sort of a full scope education within a professional setting. And if I think about the disciplines that reside in a community banking organization, I'll just run through them pretty quickly for you. So if you're have a certain interest in accounting, finance, lending, human resource management, we spend an awful lot of time on human resource management. Facilities management, we have 14 branches. So you can imagine that the lights have to go on every morning. We have to make sure there's running water. We have to make sure we create a comfortable setting for both our employees and our valued customers. Branch management, and Kristine can talk a little bit about that. Marketing, we do a tremendous amount of marketing. So any organization is really only as good as its brand in any fashion. So we spend a good deal of time making sure that we have a brand that is well recognized. And we actually went through probably 6 years ago an entire rebranding effort. Manasquan Bank was known in the town of Manasquan, not elsewhere. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to adopt a logo that was portable, one that was much more universal. And we did so about 6 years ago, and it's really worked very well for us. Compliance, and Luanne can talk a little bit about compliance, operations, supply chain management. You don't think about banks and supply chain management, but you think about procurement and the like. And so we get involved in that. Certainly information technology and artificial intelligence is something that's playing an increasingly important role in the banking industry, administration and audit. And so, we sort of cover the gamut. So if you're thinking about a career and you're thinking about where you can sort of learn what are the major drivers of the economy and society, it's really very important. And I'll focus a little bit on society. So one of the things that we've done is we have always been a very philanthropic organization. It's really extraordinarily important. As I call it, the incumbency to give back. And so we formalized that process in 2014. We created our own foundation. It's called Manasquan Bank Charitable Foundation. We take no contributions from external, any external sources. We fund it ourselves. So we have funded the foundation with about $1.2 million. We've given away about $1 million in grants to mostly small 501c3s, which are not-for-profits, that really make a difference in society. And whether that be education, whether that be athletic, whether that be abuse, whatever it is, we look at that and we say, you know what, we need to make a positive impact, not only in our daily operation, but somehow fund the future generations and to help them to get from point A to point B. You are, to a great degree, in a very unique place. You have a wonderful empowerment. The question is, how do you get from point A to point B? And I always talk about things that sort of are really drivers. One of the things I always talk about is don't settle, never settle. Always challenge the convention. Make sure you do so with great reverence, but challenge the convention. If you don't challenge a convention, what will happen is that you will sort of breed an environment of mediocrity. And mediocrity is just not a good place to be. And mediocrity breeds complacency. So create discomfort in your life. Hope is not a strategy. What you really need to do is create that discomfort. The most important part of it is find a passion. Find something that you love, because passion drives excellence drives success and self-fulfillment. And success is contagious. And you need to be the carrier of that infectious quality called success. You have the responsibility best you can, and you can only be attained when you possess passion. The other thing is live in the moment. I think it's really important to savor the moment without ever risking the future. So there's consequences of each and every one of your decisions. Today's gratification couldn't be tomorrow's nightmare. So just be careful about that, but live in the moment. Don't let any day pass without making yourself feel good about something you're doing, something you're contributing in some fashion. And those are sort of the core values, and I'll talk about core values in a minute, that we abide by at Manasquan Bank. And the fourth one is give back, which I talked about before, the incumbency to give back. We have 4 core values within our organization. One is engagement, which I talked about a little bit when I talk about our wonderful employees. The second one is quality, which speaks for itself. The third one is innovation. And innovation is really understanding the way each of the generations is going to consume financial services on a going forward basis. So we have to make sure that we have state of the art. And the fourth one is relevance and sustainability, to make sure that our 147 years has some real meaning in the marketplace so that we can move forward and continue to grow the organization and have an organization that people can be proud of banking with, people can be proud of working with, and people can be proud of referring business to. And it's pretty simple. It's a lot of hard work, tremendous amount of hard work, but nothing that is worthwhile is easy. And so one of the things that you need to think about is, how do you get from point A to point B? What are the mentors that you're going to need? How can you reach out to make yourself better each and every day? I think it's very important. This is a very unique time, particularly in banking. It's the first time in history that banks are servicing 5 generations, the greatest generation, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. And so we have to create an environment that embraces each and every one of those generations without disenfranchising any one of those. And so what we hope is that we're breeding, if you will, a younger generation that finds banking something that they want to move forward with. Think about this for a minute. When a small business owner comes to a bank for a business loan, and we're able to provide them a business loan, that's capital for them to grow. And that's the engine of growth for the economy. And so we take great pride in making sure that we can equip small businesses in order for allow them to prosper. And one of the greatest compliments we ever get is they prosper to the extent that they outgrow us and they have to go to a larger bank, because we know that we gave them those seeds and we helped them plant those seeds that they could continue to grow. So I could talk all day long about banking, and I could talk all day long about anything you'd like. But I will absolutely, want to make this as interactive as possible. So Carla, I don't know if you just want to open up for questions, if you want to move on to the program, however you want to deal with it is fine with me.
I'd love to see if any of our students have any questions, or ambassadors or anyone on the call. Be a great time to use this great resource we have in front of us to ask any questions that you have.
Come on, guys.
I do want to ask you, how did you get to where you are today? Is this, in middle school, is this where you thought you'd be or what you wanted to do?
Pure luck. Pure luck.
It helps.
So, pardon?
It helps.
Yeah, it does help. So right place, right time, having a mentor. So I started my career in New York City, back way before you were born. And then I came down to community banking in the early 80s down here. And I joined an organization, which is a legacy organization that hasn't been around since 1995. But it was led by a young lady named Elsie Sokol. She was the chairman and CEO of the organization. And she mentored me tremendously and saw something in me that she thought that she could groom me to be a leader and manage people and the like. And so from there, it's been pretty simple. And it's all about 3 things: dignity, respect, and professionalism. So you treat everybody with that, and an open door policy. So banks are great at building barriers. Right? Physical barriers, emotional barriers, intellectual barriers. And my job is to make sure we remove barriers. So if you walk into a branch, a traditional branch, you see this big imposing thing called a teller counter, right? It's this physical presence between the person that is obtaining services and the person that is providing services. And teller counters were wonderful when people rob banks. And so Jesse James isn't around anymore. I shouldn't say that too loud because we got robbed about 5 months ago. But the setting that we have in all our branches is much more intimate, much more open. So that's an example of a physical barrier. Emotional barriers, intellectual barriers mean that people need access. So made it very clear up front that when people want us, they need to talk to us. So if you look at my business card or Kristine's or Luanne's and you call that number, guess what? That phone rings at their desk, including myself. I don't need 3 layers or 4 layers or 5 layers. People want access. And I think both Luanne and Kristine hopefully would tell you that, my door's open, always open. And I sort of measure my productivity as how many interruptions I get on a daily basis. how many people come into my office to talk about a whole variety of different things. And so the culture that we've created in Manasquan Bank, honestly, is second to none. You know, there's a rumor on the street for all other bankers in the state of New Jersey and probably elsewhere. And that is, if you want a job at Manasquan Bank, you need to know somebody, because people want to work in an environment where they're empowered to make a difference. They can make a difference, and they can get appropriately recognized and rewarded for doing so.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's so important. You mentored mentors, and, you know, at the Student Alliance, a lot of our students are connected with a mentor. And I think, you know, just having someone believe in you, and also, you know, it's a two-way street to just ask those questions, and a little bit of luck. Absolutely.
Yeah, it can't hurt, right?
Nope, it can't hurt. But
So Carly, it's interesting. About 5 or 6 years ago, I had one of our branch managers in my office one day, and maybe it's longer than that, maybe now. And I said to her, "What do you want? Where do you want to be in 5 years?" And she said, "You know what? Nobody's ever asked me that question before." And so the real question that we have to ask everybody is, what do you want to do today? What is the path that you want to be? Where do you want to do? And what can we do in order to create an environment where you can achieve those goals? And that's why HR plays such an important role, human resources, in any organization, particularly in a banking organization. Four years ago, we lost our director of HR. And as we went to try to replace that person, interestingly, we went and had a number of very, very qualified candidates. The person we chose had never worked in a bank before, because human resources is human resources. And I didn't want somebody to be tainted with sort of these preconceived notions of what a banking HR person should look like. But I wanted somebody that said, open architecture, this is what an HR person should look like. And let's bring sort of some fresh ideas into the organization so that we can continue to grow and flourish and provide the kinds of support that each one of our valued colleagues requires.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions? That was so interesting. I love what you're doing there.
Hey, Carla, I have a question, actually.
Yeah, Mike.
Hey, James, so thank you again for taking the time to speak with us. So you had said, you know, finding things that you were passionate about were important for driving your success. Just wondering, like, what some of the things, you know, that you found yourself that you were very into or passionate about that helped you along with your career.
So I'm a lover of numbers. So I love numbers. I love finances. So if you think about as you go through life, are there certain sort of prerequisites in terms of understanding what's going on in the business world? And I would say that for anybody that is going through education, there are two, I think, mandatory classes. One is accounting. So because accounting is nothing more than a language of business. And the other one is public speaking. If you can master those two, I think you can go an awful long way. So when I'm fortunate enough, when I look at a company's balance sheet or income statement, I can get a full-blown picture of what that company does, what they look like, what they do well, what they don't do so well, how they can potentially improve. And so then I can have an intelligent conversation with the business owner as they're asking for a working capital line or a commercial mortgage or a C&I loan. And I can have an intelligent conversation about, you know, here's where I think your strengths are, here's where you need to beef up some of the weaknesses and the like. And so it's not only just signing a paper and a loan document, but it's having a good conversation. And, you know, we are consultants as much as we are bankers.
That's a good question.
It's a great question. The answer was okay, but the good question was.
That was great. Great. Anyone else?
I have a quick question. So as a high school student and in the spirit of Financial Literacy Month, what would you say is the best place to start for someone that pretty much doesn't have any background in financial literacy?
That's a good question. So Luanne, you want to take it or you want me to take it? You're on mute.
You can go ahead. You're doing well, Jim.
Oh, thanks, Luanne. I appreciate it very much. So this is really silly, something stupid, but managing your own finances is a great place to start. So understanding and creating your own little budget. So if you're working and you're making X amount of dollars per week or per month, understand where those dollars should go. Should they go through to food, or should they go to clothing, or should they go to savings? Or then understanding that you're working within a finite dollar amount and managing that process is a wonderful, wonderful way to start. You don't have to be tremendously disciplined about it, but you need to understand it. So most people manage money until there's no more left, versus managing money proactively to say, I want to take 5% or 6% or 3% of my take-home pay, and I want to put it into a savings account so that I can save for the future or buy a house or do something else. But understanding the amount of revenue that you're generating and where that is all going in terms of spending is a wonderful, wonderful place to start. And managing credit is the other thing. Credit is a terrific tool, but it can be absolutely disastrous if in fact you don't know how to manage it. It's really simple to utilize. It's not so simple to pay back sometimes when you get over your head.
And I'm just going to echo off of what Jim's saying. I think the one thing that I learned, when I started working, I had a gentleman that was very kind enough to help me understand the importance of saving for retirement. And he set me up with reference to, when you work for a company, a lot of companies offer what they call 401ks. And he showed me how I could start that process in saving for my retirement, and how important the 401k was, especially when a company matches dollar for dollar, and the money that you can, save with that aspect. So I think it's really important that everyone understands that when they do go out into the workforce, and if the company does offer a 401k, it's extremely important that you take advantage of it from the get-go. And I always found that it was easier to do that when, you start from the beginning. You don't get that paycheck, you don't get that money in your paycheck because you already put it into your 401k. So you're not losing anything, or you're not feeling like you're missing anything. So it's really important that you look at that piece of it when you do go out into the workforce.
Yeah, it's real easy not to do that because, at your age, you're going to say, well, savings, retirement, it's 1,000 years off. I don't need to start worrying about that. And even if it's not a lot of money, if you put a little money away, we often talk about compounding and how it works, although in the paltry interest rate environment we're operating in today, it's not all that attractive, but over a period of time it is. So the other thing is, if you do a 401k or if you do an IRA, the other thing is you can educate yourself on what are the investment alternatives that I can utilize within that vehicle, and understanding how the market works, and understanding between equity and debt, and understanding those kinds of things, and what are the drivers in the marketplace could be very helpful as well in terms of just increasing your financial literacy.
Great. Do any of our students have savings accounts? You guys, because I think most of you do have jobs, right? Good. So you're starting to do some of that.
Yeah. So here's something interesting. So Kristine probably doesn't even know this, but one of the things, so as a small community bank, it's very difficult for me to potentially compete with a JP Morgan Chase or somebody like that, but we are compelled to be pretty leading edge. One of the things I'll be looking at over the next 3 or 4 months with the help of Luanne and some others in the organization is, should we be involved in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin? And so we've started at least to talk about it. We're going to talk with my board about it in April. We've done some preliminary research on it. Interesting, here's some interesting stats. 25% of the US population has either been involved or is involved in some type of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin being the predominant one. And Goldman Sachs, which is a leader on Wall Street, something like 40 to 45% of their client base is involved in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. So even though we're a small community banking enterprise, We know that's going to be attractive to particularly Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z. And so we're going to try to figure out a way that we can get involvement so the people that bank with us can use our mobile app. And maybe what we'll do is we'll pay interest in Bitcoin, something like that. And Bitcoin is something called stored value. So think about it as you've often heard people talk about, well, maybe I should buy some gold and some silver because it goes up in value over a long period of time. Bitcoin is a stored value type thing like that as well, because of the finite amount of it in the marketplace, and will be for quite some time. That's it.
Anyone, any questions? I am fascinated by that last comment, but I can't even ask a question about it because I don't know enough about it. I'm trying to read up on it, but I think it's a little over my head.
It's pretty esoteric. And so you have to sort of start with a blank slate, get rid of your preconceived notions that it is something. So here's something that's really interesting. Financial fraud is a massive issue in today's society. And whether it be illegal operations and the like, but it's just gigantic. It's easier to trace financial fraud with Bitcoin than it is with traditional currency or cash. Because every single Bitcoin trade is traceable. And so the FBI in some major, there was something called SolarWinds and some other things where they've been very lucky, and they've been able to trace the Bitcoin transactions back to the perpetrator. If those transactions were conducted in a wire transfer or cash, it would have been extraordinarily difficult for them to do the same.
Wow, that's fascinating. Wow, a little scary though. It does seem very futuristic.
It is. Yeah, but it's really not. In 3 years, we're all going to wake up and every single bank's going to have a Bitcoin offering.
I still like cash.
So if I were to ask everybody on the call on a typical day how much cash they have in their pockets, I would venture to guess the number is, in many cases, less than $20, and in some cases zero, because everything is done with your debit card.
Yep. Very true.
Before we forget, I like to give everyone a heads up. I'm going to take a screenshot so we have a photo. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just don't want to forget. So let's see, I'll tell you when. Okay, is everyone ready?
I'm real ready.
I know you're ready. I'm going to Photoshop you in there. Don't worry.
Okay.
Perfect.
Does anyone else have any questions? I feel like we've gone over so many different things. It's fascinating.
I really like what you mentioned about thinking about your audience at the bank, and how just the span of age that you have to cover and that you have to serve, and have to make so many people feel comfortable. I'll be honest, I can't tell you the last time I stepped foot in a bank.
Sure. People don't, a lot of it. So our branch traffic is down probably 8% per year over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
However, branching will always be the cornerstone of banks, because when people have an issue or a problem, or they want to apply for a loan, or they want to go see a happy face like Kristine's, they'll go into the branch. So Kristine is a perfect example. We measure branches in terms of how many deposits they have. Kristine's been open about her branch in Shrewsbury. She went from another branch, opened a brand new branch 2 years ago. 5-year projection in that branch was we'd be at 50 million in deposits in 5 years. 2 years later, she's at $60 million in deposits, because she's done just a remarkable job over there.
That's awesome.
Actually 66 today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Kristine.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So
That is great.
so-
What
so
else
he-
do you see as the future of banking? Like, I know we talked about this electronic currency, but is there anything else that you see as going to be like the next thing in terms of banking or in terms of
So
currency or something like that?
so it's interesting. And the pandemic, COVID-19 has really spawned the reemergence of community banking because it's all about relationships. And so the products and services that we offer to some degree are commodities. You know, our mortgage looks like everybody else's mortgage. But when you have a problem with your contract on your purchase and you have somebody to talk to that walk you through that. So I always often talk about, you know, the combination of high touch and high tech. And I think those are really that's going to be the recipes of the recipe for success. So our success to a great degree is a function of the failure of the balance of the industry. Banks are mediocre at best as an industry. And so if you're a little bit better than mediocre, you're a superstar. We'll never settle for mediocrity. But we have to recognize that that you know, to a great degree, our success is because people get disenchanted with other organizations. We call it threshold of pain. How much pain do you have to go with your existing bank until you're able to move? Because guess what? It's a pain in the neck to move from bank to bank. There's a lot of things that you need to do. So, but the threshold of pain is something that really drives people. And the other thing that's happening in dynamics. So if you go back to 1985, there were 18,000 banks in the country. You go back about 10 years, there were about 8,000 banks in the country. Today, there's less than 5,000 banks in the country. So I always say, you know, this is like 10 little Indians, and then there'll be none, and we'll be last man standing.
All because of experience.
All because of being motivated to try to do the right thing each and every day. That's all. It's just that simple.
Yeah, it's huge.
Kristine, did you want to talk about the savings and banking basics, or do you? It's up to you.
Well, sure. So it's very important to save. My father, probably one of the best lessons my father taught me was to pay yourself first, whether that be putting money into a 401k if that's offered at your job, or putting a percentage into a savings account. Figuring out a budget, like Jim said, is so important because life happens. You might need it for an emergency. You might need to buy a new car. You might want to go on a vacation. Savings it's needed. And a great way to save is coin. And we are probably one of the few banks in the area that has a coin machine. And if you're our customer, you get to use it for free. And it's very popular.
Yeah. Most people got rid of them, and they got rid of them because they're highly regulated, actually. They're regulated by, I think, the Casino Commission, right?
Yeah, I know something with the state because we have to have certification. They come every year to run a test, make sure that it's counting properly.
Yeah, I think it's part of the Casino Commission, actually.
And it adds up. We had a couple come in about 2 weeks ago with 40 years worth of coin that they deposited every couple of days for 2 weeks. And it was well over $8,000.
Wow.
Which is significant.
That's a lot of coin.
It was a lot of coin.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it
I
filled
love
up
that.
It was crazy. Filled up the whole trunk of his car.
Wow.
Carla, you mentioned something earlier, which is
Yes.
interesting, and that is, dealing with all kinds of different generations, and so that's a big challenge sometimes. I remember not too long ago, I got a letter in the mail from a fellow who was probably in his mid 80s, and we used to have CDs that were in passbooks, and we got rid of those. And so he wrote this letter, and he said, your bank was perfect until you got there and screwed it up, and you're nothing more than a bunch of numbskulls. And it went on and on and on and on. So I picked up the phone and I called them, and I was very respectful, and I introduced myself. I said, my name is Jim Vaccaro. I'm the chief numbskull over at Manasquan Bank. Literally, I had that conversation with him. And you know what? At the end of the day, he wasn't pleased, but he was happy that somebody gave him the time and the effort to call him and hear him out. And sometimes people just want an audience. And so part of our job is to make sure they have an audience. I always say there's 4 things that are important in people's lives: their time, their families, their pets, and their money. We're not sure what order, but we know we have something to do with one of those, and we take that obligation very seriously.
I just wanted to touch upon, this is Luanne, and I just wanted to touch upon, we talked about, what we were going to present today to the group, and we thought it was really important that we talked about how you can save and pay for college, because college is extremely important in everyone's endeavors. So that was my task. So a little bit about myself. I started with Manasquan Bank probably 5 years ago. When I first started in banking, I actually was putting myself through college, Rider College, as a part-time teller. And that's how I was able to get myself through college back in the day. I'm not going to talk about how long ago.
Come on.
But some of the things that I wanted to mention were, college expenses, they add up very quickly. I mean, you've got your tuition costs, you've got your room and board, you've got your books and supplies, and your personal expenses and your transportation. So all that adds up, and everyone is so worried about how they're going to, be able to accomplish that and meet those expenses. We wanted to make sure everyone was aware that, there's financial aid is available to you, and they come in different forums, such as federal student aid programs that are out there for the students to use, such as the Pell Grants, the student loans, and the college work study program. So those are all available to the students when they're looking to find ways to meet the college expense cost. We also have, where colleges are able to provide scholarships and grants, and scholarships aren't just on academic reasons or athletic reasons. There's other scholarships that the colleges are able to provide to the students. So those are avenues that you can explore when you're looking at ways to try to curb those expenses that you're going to incur during college. The one thing I wanted to make you aware of is what you call the FAFSA form, which is the free application for federal student aid form. And it's so key that you complete that form as early as possible, because it really is a first come, first serve basis, or at least that's what I like to say. But that information that's used from that FAFSA form will tell the colleges what the expected family contribution will be towards the tuition and college expenses that the students are going to, be responsible for. Some of the other areas that you can look at are grants, and what's good about grants is they don't have to be repaid. Those are grants that are offered by the colleges in the form of, federal government or supplemental education opportunities or teacher education assistance for colleges and higher education grants. And there's also grants out there with reference to military service. So there's different opportunities for students to go out there and look to see how they can curb those expenses. Student loans are also available, and the federal government does provide what they call federal student loans. And a lot of those federal student loans are on a lower interest base for the students. And also they have deferments, where the student loan isn't required to be paid back until a certain amount of time after the student graduates. So those are things that you want to look at. And you always want to look at your federal student loans that are available to you prior to going out and getting personal loans, such as, through standard conventional banks, because those are usually on a higher cost basis with reference to interest rates. And they also don't have those deferral benefits that the federal government offers. So, know that you have those opportunities to go out there and research to look for those opportunities with the federal government with reference to the student loans. Some of this, like I said, the federal student loans, some of the benefits are the low fixed interest rates, and they are relatively low compared to the conventional loans from, normal banks. Cancellations for certain employment opportunities, and those are around your teaching grants that they have available. And deferment, which is the postponement of making those payments, especially when you once you graduate, if you cannot find that job right away, there's the deferment piece with reference to your federal loans that you can defer until you do get your job and everything, you're getting an income coming in. And the other thing that I want to talk about was the work study programs. That's out there from the federal government as well, with reference to the colleges offer these work study programs for the students, where they are provided dollars to go towards their education, where they are working a small amount of time during their school term, usually around what the student's course of study is. So that's another avenue that you can, research to do. And then the scholarships by colleges, like I said, they're not just on athletic scholarships, because everyone knows about, everybody gets athletic scholarships or academic scholarships, but there's other scholarships out there, especially around private scholarships, such as churches or local organizations that provide scholarships. The key is, doing your research and looking for those scholarship opportunities, because there are a lot out there. But the one thing I do want to mention to you is, and in banking, and Jim mentioned this, that fraud is such a huge factor in banking. There's scholarship fraud out there all the time, and it's really important to know the red flags when you're looking on the internet for different scholarships that you might be able to use. Just look for those red flags, such as if they're requesting you to pay a fee for the scholarship. I can tell you that's probably not a scholarship that you want to look at. It's probably a scam. Or an unsolicited scholarship offer that you receive from a phone or mail or email. Or limited offer, meaning you got to apply for this right away or you'll lose out on the opportunity. Just know that those are probably scams out there. Scholarships, there's no fees to. There's usually no any type of conditions in order for you to qualify for the scholarship. I think it's just important that you do your due diligence when you're looking for these opportunities for college. And college is a huge, expense, and students are, become, daunted over, how am I going to pay for this? And just from me, growing up, when I started looking at, first of all, when I was in high school, I was not thinking I was going to college. I was thinking I was going to be a court reporter. And probably halfway through my senior year, I decided I wanted to go to college. And looking at that opportunity, and coming from a single mom with 4 kids, the opportunity, we just couldn't afford a college education, but I did look out there for different things that I could do to try to make myself, be able to attend the college. And I did, I worked 3 jobs, but, it was doable. So, and there were, federal grants out there for myself to use at that time. So, I took advantage of that, and that we just wanted you to be aware of out there. So this way you have an opportunity to explore the potential of, going off to college. So. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Luanne.
Thanks, Jim.
That was awesome, especially because I think we do have a lot of juniors and seniors as part of our alliance. So that's very helpful and very timely. Thank you. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions for any of our speakers tonight? Okay. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just, from our perspective, we appreciate the opportunity at least to talk to you and have a ongoing dialogue, hopefully on a future basis as well. And know that the Manasquan Bank is here if you need anything. Pick up the phone, give us a holler. We do have internship programs, but I think we've already filled for this year. We think it's very, very important. What I want to do is I want to surround myself with young, bright people that are energetic, that want to make a difference in the world. And again, one of the things I told you before is every morning I wake up with this blank canvas and I say, I got to figure about a way to reinvent ourselves and how can we be different, and how how can we make sure that we become the banking organization of choice? And you have to do that within the context of, we're a very highly regulated industry. So we have the FDIC and the state of New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance and the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, and they all come in on an annual basis, and they basically do a full scope audit and something called safety and soundness. They want to make sure that you're operating in a safe and sound fashion. And so typically what happens is they'll come in once a year and they'll descend on you with maybe 15 examiners, and they'll commandeer your boardroom for about 8 weeks. And then at the end of it, they'll give you a 40-page report, and it's a report card, a literal report card. And they measure everything from management to earnings to everything. And they give you a composite rating. And we take that responsibility very seriously. We have forged a wonderful relationship with each of our regulators. We think it's important because their perspective is beyond Monmouth Ocean, Middlesex County, New Jersey. It's really much more national, in many cases global. And so it's all part of that learning process. So if you're interested in having a discussion about anything as it pertains to banking, or again, if you think about the tentacles of banking, it really touches virtually every single aspect of our society. And we'd be more than happy to entertain anything, any kind of discussion you'd like to have at any given point in time. And then as you accumulate wealth, it's really important that you come see us, because we don't want you banking anywhere else.
Love it. I love it. Well, I have to tell you, I am so impressed because I think that it's so much more than what I thought of as just a bank. You guys embody so many amazing things, so many things that I think we at Tigger House stand for when it comes to so many things you spoke about, achieving your goals. I hope that when we can safely see each other in person, maybe we'd love to take a visit. I think our students
Sure.
would love to, meet your group in person. I think you have so much to offer, and I hope that we can continue the great partnership we had. Personally, I don't know if the students know this, I'm very grateful. Tigger House is very grateful. When the pandemic hit, Manasquan Bank did offer us a grant that really, really helped us because we had a lot of hard times with fundraising last year, and you guys were there for us, and that really, really meant so much. You've never turned your back on us, and we appreciate that. So I hope that this is kind of the start of a great relationship, especially the fact that we're growing with our students. So let's definitely keep the conversation going. If any of the students have any questions or want to reach out, we will share your contact information as well, if that's okay.
So one parting story, may I?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm full of stories.
I love it.
So when we started the strategic planning process a number of years ago, I named it Unlock the Pens. And it goes back to a story that I had a number of years ago when I was giving a tour of one of our branches to a bunch of fifth graders. And we went to the vault, and we went behind what was then the teller line, and we did all these things. And then I asked if there were any questions. There's a little guy in the back of the room waving his hand. And he said, "Mr. Vaccaro, may I ask you a question?" I said, "Certainly, John. What's the question?" He said, "How come the vault is open, but the pens are locked?" So if you've ever been in a branch, typically what happens is when you're filling out a form, the pens have a chain on them, so you can't take them. So the next thing I did is I went and got a chain cutter, and I cut every single damn chain in the bank, because I want people to take our pens, particularly if they have our name on them, because it's a great marketing piece. So if you think about sort of what you're doing each and every day, think about unlocking the pens.
I love that. That's amazing. That's a great, great thing to think about. You guys have been really, I said I'm impressed. I didn't know what to expect from this if we were just going to learn about banking, but I feel like we gained so much more. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
really,
time.
really appreciate it. This has been
Thank
amazing.
you. Be safe, everybody, okay?
You as
Hope to
well.
Thank
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
That was
Have a great
awesome.
love to
night.
give you a
Thanks for
hug at
having
some
us.
point in time.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great night, everyone. Thank you. Thanks to all the
Thank
Have a
students
great
and
night,
ambassadors
everyone.
too.
Thanks. Good night.